So the music video I'm making is for the song Lonely Press Play by Damon Albarn. And my idea is to have a theme of kind of isolation and loneliness. So the main character throughout the music video has a skull face, which kind of represents, insecurities and things like that. And so the character covers up the skull face with makeup and stuff for going out into public and things like that. Throughout the music video, there are sections where there will be a close-up of her face, and it will be sped up. It will be very quick. There will be kind of frantic hand movements around her head, and the skull face slowly starts disappearing, which we'll use by kind of just using makeup. And with the theme of isolation, that's kind of shown throughout it, through the location. So I'll be contrasting busy urban locations with a completely dark, empty room or corridor, and that's kind of to show like literal isolation and the feeling of isolation even when you're surrounded by people. And I'm also going to have the video as either completely black and white or just really desaturated, and by the end of it, when the character comes to kind of accept himself, the colour returns and they stop covering themselves up. They just go out with their skull face, and it comes to that point through listening to music, hence Lonely Press Play.
I really like the idea of kind of having the whole thing in very, very gloomy or very kind of black and white dark colours, and then as they come to accept themselves, kind of, the colour coming in. I think that's a good idea.
Why did you choose a skull for the face?
I think because, everyone has a skull, I'm assuming, and it's kind of the raw person. It's who you are underneath your skin, under everything. That is kind of you, and I think it's a good representation of the insecurities that someone might be feeling. So rather than pinpointing a specific insecurity, so making the character insecure about their hair or a spot on their face, it's just a general thing that then makes it relatable to anyone watching.
Also, what does the quick cuts of the close-ups on the skull face actually represent?
That kind of represents the anxiety associated with feeling isolated. So with anxiety, it's very quick, it's frantic, it's there's a high level of energy, but it's kind of a negative energy, and that slowly starts to disappear as the music video goes on. So by the end of it, when they've come to completely accept themselves, it's all slowed down more, and it's natural and it's more positive. And the colour comes back, it's more vibrant and not so dull and desaturated.
What do the frantic hands represent? Are they hers or other people's?
They're other people's. So what I'm planning on doing is using the drama studio, having a spotlight on the person, and as the kind of skull face is being removed, I'll have other people standing beside or behind her, and I'll film it at half speed and then speed it up in the editing process. So there'll be lots of hand movements around her head or clawing at her face, and then that gets sped up in post-production. Yeah.
How are you going to make it obvious that when she puts on the makeup, it's not the skull that's the actual makeup? How are you going to make it obvious that that's her natural face?
That'll happen through the sped up close-up. So basically, at the very beginning, it shows the skull face, and through those clips, the skull face starts disappearing. She's kind of pushing at it and trying to cover it up with her own hands, while these other hands are going crazy around her head.
Do you think that'll make it obvious that it's not the skull that's the actual makeup?
That is definitely something to think about while we're shooting it, and if it, while shooting it, if it does seem like that, I will have to kind of compromise or have a look at other ways that we could shoot it. But that is a good point. Definitely something to think about. So for the locations, as I mentioned, kind of urban, busy streets, maybe kind of graffiti or just very busy areas like the centre of town, or like a street somewhere with plenty of people there, just somewhere that is full of people. I'll also be using the drama studio or an empty dark room, a school corridor maybe, which, as I said, kind of contrasts between being literally alone and the feeling of loneliness. What locations would you suggest?
Suggest some sort of like back street, because you could use that. Like that could be full of people and it could be completely empty at the same time. So you could use like the same location, but like.
I was thinking with maybe instead of a drama studio, you could use sort of a dark but confined space. So maybe a cupboard or something.
The only reason I was thinking the drama studio was because of the spotlight. Because I think anywhere I shoot, if it's going to be a dark location, I'm going to have trouble with the lighting.
Yeah.
And so with the drama studio, we can make it look small, as if it's dark, but then have a spotlight on the character.
I think like kind of really big empty open spaces would be kind of cool, and then so that it's kind of just one person in this massive kind of open but completely isolated space. If that makes sense. Yeah.
What type of shots or imagery do you imagine when you hear the word isolated? So it's something I could use maybe in the music video.
Maybe like a zoom out to just this person in the middle of like nothing, like Harry was just suggesting.
With the frantic hands, you kind of imagine like blurs and almost like trippiness in a way.
What are some of your favourite music videos, and what aspects of them make them interesting to you?
Virtual Insanity.
Virtual Insanity.
By Jamiroquai.
Okay.
Because it's very dynamic, but it stays in the same location.
How is it dynamic? What features are there? What angles?
There's a lot of they play with the camera a lot, so they can turn it. They turn it here and there, and then they point it to the floor. When they go back up, the scenery has changed, and this entire room, all the things in the room are moving.
Right.
So there's a lot of movement, and obviously there's one main person that's just sort of in the middle of the room moving.
And would you say that a lot of movement would that would work in this as well, if there was a lot of movement or editing?
I don't think it would.
No.
With the same movement, I don't think it would work. I mean, you could have moments of that with the hands or whatever, but no, I don't think the same movement.
I quite like Little Game by Benny, because like with your idea of like dark and light, he like uses colours as well, like blue and pink to represent like male and female. And I think the idea of like contrasting colours is a good way of like showing a change.
So do you think as in certain parts of the song there should be momentary moments of colour before going back to desaturation, or just at the end where the colour comes in?
Well, I think it depends when you want to show like the change between like being alone and then accepting themselves. So
that moment happens in the very last verse, or the last kind of 20 seconds or so of the music video. But there is a moment earlier on in the song, and the lyrics are swimming in blue. And at that point I wanted there to be a kind of flash of colour or of blue, which I then tie into maybe a certain moment happening, maybe the first time the character listens to music but it doesn't quite pick up fully until the end.
So maybe in those two moments colour would be a good idea.
I think it reminds me of I don't know if you've seen, it's a Bastille song, I think, is it Floors? Yeah. And I don't know if you music video to it, but that's kind of a similar thing with it's this guy, and then I guess it's a group of friends, and they've all kind of got skull faces, and I think he's kind of there like accept who they are, and I think he's trying to do the same.
Okay. And following that, what aspects or features of music videos do you hate? So anything that you'll see in a music video and it will immediately put you off a music video.
When there's a band in the music video singing, and that is all the music video is, with stuff happening around them. I really really dislike that.
Luckily for you, that's not what's going to happen in this one. There is going to be no band or singing. It will purely be kind of a narrative performance.
I've got another music video as well.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of your video, there's going to be a lot of colour.
Yeah.
Well, that reminded me of Call Your Girlfriend by Robin.
Right.
Where there's this massive one-shot choreography, and around Robin, who's singing and dancing, there's just all these crazy lights going on, and
Okay.
you could use like crazy lighting with
Mhm.
colour, and possibly even some choreography if you
Yeah.
wanted. But
That's a good idea. Connie, any features in music videos that you hate?
Yeah, when it's like, especially like with female singers, like stereotypically, they tend to just sort of prance around and
Kind of over-sexualized.
act like they're like amazing and there's no meaning behind it. It's just them trying to look good. So.
Just when like so much is trying to be fit into like, I don't know, because I know it's trying to tell a story across like 3 minutes, but I think when like too much is being fit into a music video and too much is going on, that's
Kind of difficult to focus on.
Mm.
It kind of has to be
It's the main
enough
focus,
there, but not too much. Yeah.
that you can't focus on it. Yeah.
Any other questions at all about the music video or about the song or anything like the process of the music video?
Because like there's not loads, but there's quite a few music videos with like skulls in it and the idea of skulls. How are you gonna make this one original?
With most music videos that include skulls, their themes are more about mortality and death. This one is more about isolation. Typically with other music videos with skulls in them, they're often choreographed. There's maybe a dance sequence or a certain event that happens in them, often to do with mortality or death. But in this one, it really is more about showing the character around other people as well. And instead of having another person or a certain thing changing them, they kind of find it in themselves to improve who they are. And I think the idea of something called narrative fuzz is important. So not having a completely 100% clear narrative throughout where you've got this thing happening, then this thing happening, and then they go and do that, and then that results in the conclusion. It's more of a general thing that can be interpreted as one thing or another as this kind of a fuzz, which makes it replayable. So someone might watch it, they'll like it and want to interpret it, so they'll watch it again. And that's kind of the important thing, really. And so in that sense, it is more original because it is a different theme. This really is more about the isolation and what the skull represents is slightly different.